For years, Americans have been handed the same basic retirement message. Save more. Then save more again. Then stare at a calculator that tells you the number still isn't enough. $1 million used to sound huge. Now, somehow it sounds average. Depending on which article you read, the real number is 1.2 million, 1.5 million, maybe even 2 million if you want to feel secure. And after hearing that enough times, people start to feel behind almost by default. Even people who have been saving for years, even people with paid-off homes on the horizon, even people who are doing far better than they realize. That's the strange part. A lot of retirement advice creates anxiety first and clarity later. Sometimes, clarity never arrives at all. Because the usual conversation starts with the wrong question. People ask, how much do I need saved? Reasonable question. Very common question. Also incomplete. Because retirement is not a giant pile of money contest. It's an income puzzle. And once you see that, the whole picture changes. Think about two people who both earn $100,000 a year. Same salary, same city, same basic retirement age. One reaches retirement with a paid-off house, lower monthly bills, and decent Social Security benefits. The other still has a mortgage, car payments, and a lifestyle built around spending almost every dollar that comes in. On paper, they might have similar savings. In real life, they are living two completely different retirements. That's where things start to get interesting. Because most retirement advice talks about portfolio size like it exists in a vacuum. It doesn't. Your retirement account is not there to fund every dollar of your life from scratch. It's there to cover the gap between what you spend and what already comes in. That sounds simple. Yet this one shift changes everything. Let's say your future monthly spending is $5,000. Now, imagine Social Security covers $3,200 of that. Suddenly, your portfolio does not need to generate $5,000 a month. It needs to generate $1,800. That is a completely different math problem. At a 4% withdrawal rate, covering $1,800 per month means covering $21,600 per year. That points to roughly $540,000 in invested assets. Still real money. Still worth taking seriously. Very different from the dramatic headlines that suggest retirement begins at 7 figures and ends in panic. And this is the part most people never think about. A paid-off house is basically a giant invisible asset in retirement. Not because it throws off cash directly, because it removes one of your biggest monthly expenses. If your mortgage is $2,000 a month and that payment disappears before retirement, your portfolio no longer needs to produce $24,000 a year just to keep the lights on. Using that same 4% framework, removing a $2,000 monthly payment can be financially similar to having an extra $600,000 working for you. That is huge. Same person, same life, same retirement age. Very different outcome because one expense vanished. This is why giant retirement targets can distort the whole conversation. They usually treat retirement like a giant number you must hit before you're allowed to relax. That framing sounds clean. It sounds official. It sounds measurable. It also hides the variables that matter most. How much will you actually spend? What fixed costs will disappear? What income is already built in? How flexible is your lifestyle? Will you work a little by choice? Will both spouses receive benefits? Do you plan to travel constantly? Or are you happiest gardening, walking the dog, and seeing your grandkids? Those are not tiny details. Those details are the game. And yet, a lot of people never build their plan around them. They build it around a scary benchmark. That creates a second problem, and this one is psychological. When people believe they are permanently behind, they start making weird decisions. They panic during market drops. They obsess over account balances. They chase high-return stories because slow progress feels emotionally unacceptable. They keep postponing joy because they assume future safety is always one more year away. A person who thinks they're behind at 45 behaves differently. A person who thinks they're behind at 55 behaves differently too. By 60, that stress can shape every decision. This is where retirement planning stops being math and starts becoming behavior. Because money decisions are rarely made on a spreadsheet alone. They're made on stressful Tuesdays. They're made after scary headlines. They're made after seeing a friend retire early. They're made after hearing someone say, "Honestly, if you don't have $1.5 million, I don't know how anyone does it." That sentence can live in someone's head for years. Now, here's the twist. A lot of retirees live on far less than the fantasy version of. A lot of retirees live on far less than the fantasy version of retirement people imagine in their 40s and 50s. Sometimes that's because they have to. Sometimes that's because their spending naturally drops. Commutes disappear. Saving for retirement stops. Payroll taxes stop. Work clothes stop mattering quite so much. Kids are off the payroll. The mortgage may be gone. Daily life gets simpler. This does not mean retirement is cheap for everyone. Healthcare can be brutal. Housing can still be a problem. Inflation matters. Long-term care risk is real. Many people genuinely are underprepared. Those things matter. Still, the average person often imagines retirement as full current spending, plus endless travel, plus zero compromises, plus perfect certainty for 30 years. That version gets expensive fast. Real retirement is usually more uneven and more human than that. Some years cost more. Some years cost less. Some people downsize. Some relocate. Some pick up occasional work because they enjoy staying active. Some discover that the lifestyle they feared was too modest actually feels pretty good once the work stress is gone. And that leads to the bigger insight. The real retirement question is not, what number sounds impressive? It's, what kind of life am I trying to fund? Those are wildly different questions. One pushes you toward comparison. The other pushes you toward design. Let's make it even more concrete. Imagine a couple needs $72,000 a year to live the retirement they want. That's $6,000 a month. Now imagine together they receive $42,000 a year from Social Security. Their remaining gap is $30,000. To support that gap with a 4% withdrawal framework, they need about $750,000 invested. Still substantial. Still something to plan for carefully. Now imagine the same couple pays off their house before retirement, and their yearly spending drops from $72,000 to $54,000. Now their gap is only $12,000 a year. That points to about $300,000. Same couple, same retirement. A totally different target because expenses changed. That is the middle of the story most advice skips over. People fixate on the asset number because it feels like the main character. In reality, monthly spending is often the real plot twist. And here's the problem with most generic advice about saving for retirement. It treats everyone like a portfolio with a pulse. It sees the account. It sees the contribution rate. It sees the projected return. It does not fully capture the life around the numbers. A teacher with a pension and a paid-off condo is different from a freelancer renting in a high-cost city. A couple with two work histories is different from one household that depended on a single income. Someone planning a quiet retirement in Tennessee is solving a different puzzle from someone planning to stay in coastal California forever. Same articles, same calculators, same scary number. Very different realities. That's why I think one of the most useful exercises in personal finance is this. Stop asking what retirement is supposed to cost. Start asking what your retirement is likely to cost. There's a huge difference. One is cultural noise. The other is your life. And once you do that, a better planning system shows up. First, estimate your future monthly spending honestly. Not fantasy spending, not influencer spending, your spending. Second, estimate what income will already exist without touching your portfolio. Social Security matters here. A lot. Any pension matters. Any rental income matters. Any part-time income you realistically expect matters too. Third, calculate the gap. That gap is the number your investments need to solve for. Now the process becomes clearer. You're not chasing a giant abstract mountain. You're funding a specific shortfall. That tends to make people calmer. And calmer investors usually make better decisions. They are less likely to sell in a panic, less likely to swing for the fences, less likely to load up on shiny financial products promising safety, income, upside, guarantees, and a side of hidden fees. A calm plan beats a dramatic plan surprisingly often. There's another reason this matters. Working longer than necessary has a cost. Sometimes that extra year of work is worth it. Sometimes it boosts benefits, strengthens savings, and makes retirement much more resilient. Sometimes, though, people keep working mainly because the benchmark in their head keeps moving. One more year becomes 2, then 3. Meanwhile, health changes, energy changes, family changes, time changes. That loss rarely shows up in a retirement calculator. The calculator can model compound growth. It can't fully price a good year of mobility. It can't measure being present while your parents are still here. It can't quantify getting your afternoons back while you still have the energy to enjoy them. This does not mean retire recklessly. It means your target should be rooted in reality, not fear. Because there's a big difference between being prepared and being endlessly postponed. So what should you take from all of this? First, big retirement numbers are often too blunt to be useful on their own. Second, your spending matters just as much as your savings, maybe more. Third, guaranteed income changes the entire picture. And fourth, feeling behind can become a financial problem all by itself if it pushes you into bad behavior. The goal is not to save as little as possible. The goal is to stop solving the wrong equation. Save consistently. Invest intelligently. Keep fees low. Understand your future benefits. Reduce fixed costs where you can. Get clear on the lifestyle you're actually building. That's a much better framework than walking around with a random 7-figure number lodged in your brain like a threat. Because retirement planning should create direction. It should not feel like an endless guilt subscription. And honestly, that may be the biggest money lesson here. A lot of financial stress comes from using somebody else's scoreboard. When you build your own, the picture gets clearer. You may discover you are behind and need to take action. That's useful. You may discover you're closer than you thought. That's useful too. Either way, clarity beats fear every time. If you enjoyed this and want more videos about money, investing, and building long-term financial freedom with a little more calm and a lot less noise, subscribe and stick around.